finished up on activity 5, and today we are going to continue on with the last activity in Unit 2. That will be activity 6, and we'll get to that a little bit later. We'll just do a short review of the key questions that we left you with over the last couple of days of last week. So, the first thing that we had to do was to create a film analysis graphic organizer, and that was on page 79. And you were asked to look at or pick a film that you wanted to do uh, a film analysis on, something that you might be familiar with, but you could have also picked one of the movies from our list previous that you might not have seen before. And we brought you to the website, the International Movie Database, and also Rotten Tomatoes, where you could get and gather important production information for the film that you could use in your film analysis. So the first key question, then 19A, was a way for you to organize all of your content, uh, much like any other assignment that we use the writing process in, that is research and note taking. So a graphic organizer is basically a way of taking notes. And there's an example on page 80 that you can use with the different elements of film that you can discuss in your um, film analysis. And then 19B, you would write your film analysis, and there is an outline that you can use on page 81. That, if as long as you follow the outline and input your own um, data, your own information from your specific movie, film, then that will be just fine. So basically, we have an introduction, three body paragraphs, actually four body paragraphs. If we spin down to page 82, and then the conclusion. Um, uh, One of the requirements are that the review should be approximately 800 to 1,000 words. And then there's a reflection question. You were also asked, key question 20 on page 82. How does the medium of film differ from the medium of print in terms of telling a story? And we reflected on a number of different ways that film and print are different, and in some ways that they are alike. There's also a rubric for your final film analysis on page 83. Make sure you always check out the rubrics because that is how you're being assessed. And if you're missing out on one of the categories, then you might need to do some extra work on your final product. Now, today, as I promised, we will finish up Unit 2 with Activity 6, Concept Mapping, Consolidating Knowledge. In this activity, you will consolidate your learning in this unit by creating a concept map that shows the relationship between and amongst key ideas. Key ideas. You'll share your concept map with your classmates and submit it to your teacher. So, the success criteria for this activity is you'll generate a list of key ideas and terms for a topic. You'll create a concept map which shows categories of key ideas and terms. An organization of key ideas terms from most complex to least complex. Relationships and connections between key ideas and terms using lines and linking words. So let's introduce this activity by reviewing the content that is on page 84. Concept mapping is a visual method for showing the relationship between and amongst ideas. In this activity, you're going to consolidate your knowledge and understanding of the theories of horror, genres of horror, elements of film, the story you read, and the film you watched. All right, so this is a way to put everything all together. And um, it's also a way to help with your memory. And also, especially if you're doing big projects like essays, to bring together all of these different parts and allow your brain to settle in and think about everything in a more abstract, global type of way. Um, it's a lot easier for you to make these connections, and then you can start thinking about questions and relationships that you might have not thought about before. All right, back to the text here. Before you continue, do a Google search for the term concept map and have a look at the different examples your search turns up. You'll notice that some examples are organized using an uh, hierarchical method, starting at the top and radiating down, while others start in the middle and radiate out. Some use color, some do not. The note below will help you figure out how to construct your concept map. So we'll just quickly go and take a look at examples of concept maps. All right, okay, let's just bring up our history here. I like to restore the whole window even though we're not going to be looking at it. And so we'll do concept map right here. All right, and we're going to look at the images because that will have more examples. Okay, so there are a variety of different structures or formats for concept maps. Right, we have that central with the spokes going out, or this one, the hierarchical type of example right here. I have it up on the right of the screen right now with the different main ideas um, and how they are connected. And then this one looks a little more confusing, but it shows relationships outside of the hierarchy, right? And and then like linking terms back to relationships and connections in this example right here. Here's a very complicated one right here, uh, right? And look at all these arrows, right? But this is what we are trying to achieve here, to be able to draw these relationships on a very large scale. And in the long run, when we are writing an essay, for instance, we can start to focus in on subject areas here that seem to be central to other ideas and concepts in the mind map itself. Okay, now I'm going back to Okay, so here's the steps. The first step includes brainstorming all the ideas we talked about in class and all the stories we've read. The table below will get you started, but you'll have to include some of your own examples too. If you don't remember what all these terms mean, you'll have to look them up. Okay, so title of the short story you read, that's our first idea that we came across. And we can have other ideas about the that short story too, about um, well, depending on what was the topic and theme, the conflict in the short story. We could add all of these too down at the bottom of the table. Right? There's a lot we can add about the short story that we read. Title of the film you watched. And the same goes for that. The elements of the film itself. What are all the different elements and how are they connected to that specific film? We can add these at the bottom squares as well. So you'll see you may need a number of, or may need, um, wow, quite a few more of these rectangle cells here. Stephen King on fear. A lot was said in that article. The psychology of fear. That's the Sigmund Freud article, of course. Scared Witless. That's the article on the physiological response, your physiological responses to scary things. And okay, so all three of those articles are just chock full of different ideas, both practical, realistic, and abstract. So, including, we also have Aristotle. Hmm, where did Aristotle come up? If you can't remember, then you may want to just flip back and see where Aristotle was mentioned in those articles. Um, ego. What's an ego and an id and a superego? And then catharsis. These are all terms that may be new to you. Uh, if you haven't studied psychology or Sigmund Freud before, you might not know what these terms are. But by the end of this unit, you should have a vague idea of how they fit into the psychology of fear. That also includes the amygdala or amygdala. That's right here, right? And Sigmund Freud and phobias. Also, the Welsh sin eater. That's brought up in, I believe it's, or is that in Stephen? Oh, I think that's in Stephen King. Uh, more, let's see, phobias. Yes, that's a Sigmund Freud thing. Uh, imaginary horrors and immaterial cause. Hmm. Well, we did have a test where we asked a question about immaterial cause, and I believe that comes from the Psychology of Fear article. The monster within. Moral allegory. So that's one of our uh, types of horror story, our genres or subgenres of horror. Simulated risk. One of the reasons people love going to watch horror movies. Psychological horror. Fascinated dread. The fantastic. Good and evil. Not knowing. Time and space. Framing, moving, and editing. So these last three, of course, are elements of film. So it's a good start, but far from complete. Try to put down all those things that you can remember that maybe not are not included here. All right, so then you have these all organized into a nice little pattern. In step two, you cut up a regular sheet of 8.5 by 11-inch paper into 1-inch squares. Transfer these words terms to your squares. Actually, it might be easier to um, transfer the words before you cut up the 1-inch squares. So, especially if you're working on word processor, you can type in the words easier now than after, right? You'd have to write them in with a pencil or pen afterwards. Okay, so once you have all your ideas on the squares, begin to sort and classify these squares looking for relationships between the ideas. All right, so, all of the ones, with Sigmund Freud is we might put those all around. We'll have Sigmund Freud in the middle, right? And then we'll put all of those ideas that were mentioned in the Psychology of Fear article about Sigmund Freud's theories. We'll put them all together, right? And we'll start, you know, putting things, linking things like that. Well, we're not quite linking things yet. We're just organizing things that are related to each other. Then, step three, concept maps work either from the inside out or from the top down. For our purposes, we'll work from the inside out. The biggest, most complex items go closer to the middle, so the less complex ideas radiate from the middle. Play around with the grouping ideas and feel free to rearrange the order until the order makes sense to you. Once it does, it's time to transfer your work to a digital format, or you can draw your concept map and scan it. Okay, so yes, you want the most complex items go closer to the middle. All right, so in the case of the most complex items would of course be the theories, the three articles, Sigmund Freud, for instance, even Stephen King. Um, and then the theories on, sorry, oh, let's see, the elements of film, for instance, might go more in the middle because it's fairly complex. There's lots of different elements of film. Um, let's see. Mm, oh, and then the um, genres of um, fear, or the genres of horror, and the subgenres as well. So these are fairly complicated because there's a number of elements that go in them. Um, things like phobias or ego, id, superego, they would go more towards the outside because they can be defined by maybe one sentence. They are one object, one thing, like catharsis as well, or the amygdala. Okay, even snuggle theory refers to one idea, where some of these um, uh, topic areas here are quite large. They contain lots of other ideas, abstract concepts, practical things as well. So there are some online programs that you can use if you want to be nice and neat. Sometimes, though, they're hard. They want you to become a member and they want personal information. So I almost think in this case it's more important just to do it by hand or use a word processor. Then, finally, look for ways in which ideas are connected. Draw lines between the concepts and place words on the lines to illustrate the relationships between the concepts. And below we have our list of um, relationship words or phrases. You know, is one of them. Um, part of. This is part of. Um, so part of the amygdala is part of the psychology of fear, or it's part of the uh, brain, the human brain. So we could use that phrase. Can be is another one that we could use, or can affect. So phobias can affect um, your fascinated dread, for instance, or immaterial cause, or psychological horror. Detected by. Hmm. What is detected by? Phobias are detected by uh, psychologists, right? Let's see. The monster within is detected by psychological horror. Excluded from. So you can how uh, make that connection between how some things, some concepts, some abstract concepts are excluded from, let's see, the moral allegory. So the monster within is excluded from moral allegory. Um, in the most case, it's more associated with uh, psychological horror. Moral allegory, remember that's where you have to, where there's a lesson to be learned, and it may not have anything to do with that monster within. Good and evil um, often is associated with moral allegory. And we also have example is same as influences is greater than. Also on the next page, this follows that. Something precedes that. So um, uh, often, when you go to a movie, right? Um, and you have this physiological response, like what causes that physiological response? Something about the elements of the film can cause that, right? We also have is like this is similar to, this includes or leads to, this can be incorporated into or connects. Um, this needs what? This needs what to happen? This produces this, and ha- and this has that, right? So these are just words to draw connections between abstract concepts, which sometimes are, contain and don't contain certain elements of another concept. There's relationships there for sure, but they are always a little bit different. So, you can use color to help you group ideas, and with depending on how huge your concept map gets, it might be very useful to use color because sometimes they get quite complicated and the relationships get all a little bit messed up. And then we have Unit 2, Activity 6, Key Question 21. This is your concept map discussion. So after you have your concept map done, submit your completed concept map to your teacher. Make sure your concept map meets the following criteria. Uses all the keywords, phrases from your concept map. Note plus additional keywords and phrases you added. Organizes keywords and phrases with most complex terms in the middle and less complex terms radiating out from the middle. Includes lines and linking words to show connections and uses color to group ideas. Okay, so that is the end of Unit 2, and the reason for the concept map is to try to, put together all of our learning, organize it into what some people, it's called a gestalt. That's another psychological term, but it helps you organize ideas that you come across in the world outside of us and helps you organize them into your brain um, in discrete units, right? It makes it easier to remember and then to put together ideas that some are alike or unlike, but this all is part of the preparation for the writing process sometime, oftentimes. Okay, so that's the end of Unit 2. Now we're going to introduce you to Unit 3 now. Unit 3 is titled Knowledge is Power, and we have the table of contents here. One thing I wanted to point out to you is the introduction of the novel. So this is the very same as we introduced you to in unit number 1, but we at that time we did that so that you could order the novel and start reading it. But now we are in unit 3 where we are going to be actually writing about the novel, and hopefully you'll have most of it read by now. And hopefully by the end of unit 3 you will have it complete. Now there's several key questions here that are related to the novel. That is key question 22 on page 13, questioning the narrator. Let's see. Uh, Key question 26, novel analysis, questioning the character, questioning character. Uh, let's see. Question 28, novel analysis, realistic or not. And key question 31, novel analysis reflecting on theme. So these are things to keep in the back of your head while you're reading the novel. The theme, of course, is always important in a novel analysis. Whether a novel is realistic or not, that's really important. Don't you think that you're not going to want to read a novel that you feel is doesn't represent reality at all, as far as you know it. If it is just too way out there, then uh, you're going to kind of lose a lot of the fun of reading it. And then the questioning the character and the narrator. Now, our novels that I have selected for this course, there's a reason that we have selected them, is that all of the narrators in these four novels, um, you have to kind of question whether or not they're giving it to you straight and narrow, right? They all of them have some kind of um, well, we call it impediment on um, being truthful, right? They could be like suffering from drug addiction. They could be very young, right? I mean, a lot of times, young people will embellish different parts of stories, different events that um, are not as important as what we might think or what we might need to read. So I wanted to point that out right now. We will have a look at all of the other different assignments in the unit as we go along here. I didn't want to spend too much time pointing them out, but please take a look at the table of contents on page 2. Then we have the unit overview. Please read that as well. I don't want to spend too much time for me reading it in class, but I'd definitely like you to familiarize yourself with what we're going to be covering in this unit. And then we have our learning goals, those things that we hope you achieve, and the success criteria. The this is the criteria that you will need to meet to do well when you complete your key questions in this unit. All right, so let's go through the success criteria. I think I was going to skip over that, but I've been trying to focus on that for um, all of the activities um, in this course so far. So this is a critical unit in the course. So you will be successful when you can choose reading strategies that are most effective for you and explain how they help you understand the text. All right, so we introduced a number of reading strategies. We At the beginning of the course, we introduced you to listening and speaking strategies. Well, reading strategies are good to explore, experiment with. Um, if you may not be familiar with a couple of them, and they may end up being very helpful with your reading, as far as searching for content or just the pure enjoyment of reading a good story. You are successful when you can identify the audience, purpose, format, and voice for a blog post. Well, it says blog post, that should have been changed. For any type of assignment, uh, they're all always different. Sometimes you're asked to write for your peers. Sometimes you're asked to write for or write an imaginary type of letter to, um, let's say, a character in the story you're reading, for instance. Yeah, so your format, uh, we have, we always give you examples of the format we would like you to follow. The audience will change, and there's always a different purpose. So for instance, we'll be doing or completing um, uh, a business letter section in this unit as well. So that is somewhat different from what we've been already um, doing in the course so far. We haven't focused in on business writing or business English previously. If you're successful when you write comments on your peers' blog posts, well, there's another section there that needs to be. We don't do posts. It's too bad we couldn't do it, but um, it's a great way to show a different type of learning. Explain your strengths and weaknesses in terms of writing business, letter, memo, and research report. Identify the audience purpose format for a business letter. Identify and explain the difference between a bar chart, a line graph, pie chart, line chart, table, diagram, and flow charts. These are all visual elements that help explain abstract ideas are that will come across in ourselves in our text when we go to college, or that we may have to use to explain something in one of our essays. You're successful when you can explain how visual appeal, labels, titles, compactness, and proximity to the text make graphics effective. You're successful when you can use mind mapping to brainstorm topics for a research report. You're successful when you can use a cue chart to help you develop research questions. And this is a really exceptional tool that helps you develop the questions that will become maybe the main topics of an essay or a report. You're successful when you identify the audience purpose format and voice of a research report. Use advanced Google search strategies to help you research a report and explain the difference between revision, editing, and proofreading, and use all these skills to create a polished version of your research report. So this will be like the major assignment. This is where we're heading in this course, okay? We have a culminating task after the essay, but really, this is what we really want you to learn, where we're heading, and really the purpose of ENG4C, to be able to write a research report. Hold on. Whoa. Oh, I just sneezed out of nowhere. Let me have a little drink here. Bear with me. Introducing the novel, Activity 1. In this activity, you will choose a novel from a list. Plan your reading by breaking it up over into four equal sections and read the first section. All right, so, this was planned out like this previous to my adoption of this course, where uh, you had much more time to complete the different sections of the novel. So it's not necessary that you break it up into four sections. My why I gave you the novel in Unit 1 was to read it, and by the time we actually got to Unit 4 here, or Unit 3, you'll explore four specific reading strategies for fiction and apply at least one of them to help you engage with your novel. Then you'll think about the audience purpose, structure, and voice. Oh, and then we go back to the blog post again. That should have been edited out. Okay, blah, blah. Don't worry about the blog post. So, the first thing we are going to look at then is on page 5. So, your first task for this course involves choosing a novel to read. You can do this by previewing each of the following novel choices. So, we did cover this earlier on, but how to preview a text? Have a look at the cover, look at the image, right? Usually there's a picture there. Read any writing that's on the cover. What predictions can you make about the book? Read the first page of the book. Think about the level of language used by the author. Do you think it's too challenging? Is it not challenging enough? Now, all of these books that we're offering, they're all pretty close, right? um, they, uh, yeah, there's not um, one thing that makes them either too challenging or not challenging enough. Scan through the book to look for chapter titles if they exist. What predictions can you make about the character or plot? You can also consult online reviews of these books at sites like Amazon and Goodreads. And generally, with these reviews, they won't tell you how it ends, and you really don't want to know how it ends right away, right? You want to enjoy the book to keep you in suspension, not knowing how it's going to end. You can enjoy that sensation. So the first book is Looking for Alaska. That's a fun book to read. It's about some kids going to private school, uh, in their case, down in southern United States. Um, the next one on page 7 is The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Indigenous author Sherman Alexie. He's from the West Coast, Spokane, Washington. That's uh, a really great book, and there are some really cherished, funny moments in there that will make you uh, have a good belly laugh. A Million Little Pieces by James Frey. Now, this is an amazing book, and uh, if you're ever thinking of becoming a drug user, you might want to read this book because it will surely sour that whole idea for you. The things that this guy has to go through as he tries to break free of his addiction. And then something a little bit different, the Jade Peony. And this one is about the relationship of, well, Chinese and Japanese people in the 1930s in Vancouver. So we get to read a little bit about the experience of being an immigrant family um, at that time. And so it has a bit of a historical component to it. Um, on page 8, we have reading strategies. Introduce that to you. Using reading strategies is something that good readers do all the time, even if they're not consciously aware of it. We choose different reading strategies for different purposes, and some work better for individual readers than others. For example, if you try to understand a setting that you know little about, making connections between the setting and the text and other settings that you've seen or read about before can help you understand the text better. As you read your first section, be deliberate about using some of the following reading strategies in order to help you with your reading comprehension. Think about the strategies that are most effective for you as a reader. And here they are: making connections to the text. What we just mentioned. As you read, think about the different connections you can make to characters, events, settings, and issues in the text. There are three different types of connections you can make: text to text, making connections to other books you've read, TV shows, or movies that you have seen. What does the plot of this book have in common with the plot of your favorite movies? There's also text to self, making connections to your own experiences. How is the main character like or unlike you? How is a setting like or unlike a place you've been to before? And then there's text to world, making connections to the outside world. How are the issues in the novel similar to issues you've seen reflected in the media or world around you? This will help you relate to the story even if it seems far removed from your own experience. The next strategy is visualization. As you read, use the clues from the text to help you picture what your author is describing so that it's almost like watching a movie in your head. What does the main character look like? What kind of setting is he or she in? You can incorporate other senses to help you dive into the book. If you were using the pages of this book, if you were inside the pages of this book, what would you be feeling, smelling, hearing, or tasting? This will help immerse yourself in the story. And then we have another strategy: talking back to the text. Have you ever tried watching a movie with a person who is so involved in the movie that they feel the need to talk to the screen? For example, are you nuts? Don't go into the attic. You could use this same strategy in a much less annoying way by using sticky notes to talk back to the book. On to page 9. Record your reactions, questions, and observations on small sticky notes and place them next to the text you read. If you give yourself a goal of 3 or 4 sticky notes per chapter, you may surprise yourself by finding you're more engaged with the story. And this is also good, using these sticky notes, for now that you are aware of the key questions regarding the novel. You can make notes to help you find certain places in the novel that um, give you support for things that you might say in your novel analysis key questions. And then you have asking questions. Another way to engage with the text is to ask questions as you read. Different kind of questions will lead you to different levels of engagement with the text. Have a look at the chart below and think about the different types, or between the two different types of questions: thin questions and thick questions. Now, we'll spend a little more time on these tomorrow. You do have a key question, the last key question from unit number 2 to complete for homework. And tomorrow we'll continue on. We'll look at what it means by, or what it's meant by thin and thick questions, and the cue chart that we should all become familiar with. And then we'll have some literature response questions and then some key questions, assigned key questions for you. Anyways, that's all we're going to cover for today. Thanks for listening in. I hope you enjoyed our class. We'll be back on air tomorrow at the same time. Have a great evening, everyone, and we'll talk to you tomorrow at the same time. Bye for now.